The table was full that Sunday. Aunties, uncles, cousins, my grandmother's sisters who only showed up for funerals and big drama. My mother had cooked her famous jollof rice, the kind she only made when she wanted people to feel warm toward her. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked in and the room got slightly quieter. I found a seat next to my cousin Beezy and smiled at the people I hadn't seen in months. The food was good. The laughter was easy. For about 40 minutes, everything felt normal. Then I heard my name from the other end of the table. My mother's voice was calm. Come. The kind of calm that comes from rehearsal, not peace. She was talking to my Aunt Pauline, but loud enough for the whole table to hear. She said I had been unstable for years, that I had a temper nobody knew about, that she was scared for my daughter Zara. She said she didn't know how much longer she could stay silent about what was happening inside my home. The table went quiet, real quiet. I felt every pair of eyes shift toward me. My husband, Felix, sat 3 seats away. He looked down at his plate. Nobody asked me a single question. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to slam my hands on that table and say every word burning inside my chest. I had a whole speech ready without even preparing it. My body was shaking under my blouse. But I didn't stand up. Picked up my fork. I took a slow bite of rice. I looked at my Aunt Pauline and smiled the kind of smile that says, "Isn't she sweet for worrying?" I said, "I know Mum loves me. She worries too much sometimes." I laughed softly. A few people laughed with me, but their eyes were still searching my face. I stayed another 30 minutes. I helped clear 2 plates from the table. I hugged my grandmother on the way out. I told my mother her rice was delicious. In the car, Felix tried to talk. I turned up the radio. That night, after Zara fell asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor with the lights off. My mind was completely clear, which surprised me. I had expected tears. Instead, I felt something cold and certain settle into my chest. I was not going to defend myself. Not yet. I was going to let the lie travel, because lies have legs but no sense of direction. And I had somewhere I needed them to go. By Tuesday I knew it had spread. My cousin Amara sent me a message that said, "Just checking on you," with a praying hands emoji. Amara never texted me first. My phone stayed quiet from people who normally chatted with me daily. The family WhatsApp group, which usually had 40 messages before noon, had barely 10, and none of them were directed at me. I was being managed, handled, talked about in careful language. I called my friend Nkechi, who was married to my cousin on my father's side. Nkechi always knew everything and had no filter. I asked her casually if she'd heard anything. She went quiet for 3 seconds too long. "Your mum just loves you," she said finally. That sentence told me everything. By Friday, I got a call from a woman at church who coordinated the women's fellowship. She said they were restructuring the volunteer schedule, and I might be moved to a less visible role for now. She sounded embarrassed saying it. I thanked her warmly. I told her I completely understood. Meanwhile, Felix came home from work and went straight to his phone. He didn't ask about my day. He didn't ask about Zara's parent-teacher meeting I'd attended alone. He was already living in the version of me my mother had created. I started writing things down. Zara's school was the one that hurt most. She was 7. She didn't understand why her class teacher, Mrs. Adeabi, suddenly started calling Felix instead of me for routine updates. She didn't understand why I was asked to wait outside during the school's family reading event while other mothers sat inside. The coordinator said it was a space issue. There were empty chairs behind her as she said it. Smiled. I said it was no problem. But I noted the date. I noted her name. I took a photo of the empty chairs through the window. At the pharmacy, a woman from our church's women's group pretended not to see me. At the neighborhood grocery store, my mother's friend Cynthia stopped the conversation she was having and watched me walk past like I was something to be monitored. I was being treated like a risk, like a problem waiting to happen, like someone who needed to be managed from a distance. It was working on people who had never had a problem with me. That was the part that told me this wasn't gossip. Gossip fades. This was something structured. Something fed consistently to people with just enough detail to sound credible. I started building a timeline. Every incident, every date, every name. It was the language that gave it away. I started paying attention to exactly what people said when they referenced what they had heard. Beezy said my mother had called me a danger to her own peace of mind. Cynthia had apparently told someone at church that I had unresolved issues going back years. My Aunt Pauline, when she called to ask if I was getting help, used the phrase, "We're all worried about your stability." 3 different people, 3 different conversations, all using the word stability. My mother is not a subtle woman. She is loud and emotional, and she repeats herself. She does not naturally speak in structured sentences. But the things coming out of people's mouths sounded rehearsed. They sounded like bullet points. Nobody was exaggerating what they had heard. They were repeating it almost exactly. That meant she wasn't venting. She was briefing people. There was a script, a consistent narrative being fed to specific people at specific moments to create a specific impression. I thought about who she would have coordinated with. My mother was smart, but she was not strategic by nature. She needed someone to help her structure this. Someone who cared about the outcome enough to help plan it carefully. That night, I looked at Felix across the dinner table and wondered how long the planning had been going on. The crack came on a Wednesday evening. I was in the kitchen when my phone buzzed with a voice note from my Aunt Pauline. She had sent it to me by mistake, clearly meant for someone else. She realized it almost immediately and sent a follow-up message asking me to delete it without listening. I had already listened. In the voice note, my Aunt Pauline was repeating something my mother had told her, that I had locked Zara in her room for 3 days without proper meals, after an argument 6 months ago. My mother had given a date. She said it happened in April. In April, Felix and I had taken Zara to his family's home in Enugu for 12 days. I had photographs, fuel receipts, and a school absence letter signed by the headmistress. Zara was 400 kilometers away from our Lagos home in April. The incident my mother described was physically impossible. I put my phone down very carefully. This was not a mother stretching the truth out of worry. Worried mothers exaggerate things that actually happened. They don't invent incidents with specific dates that can be checked. This was constructed. Someone had sat down and built a story. And the story had a purpose beyond reputation. I needed to find out what that purpose was. I chose a Saturday morning to talk to Felix. Zara was at my neighbor's daughter's birthday party. The house was quiet. I made 2 cups of tea and sat across from him at the kitchen table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I placed my phone between us with the voice note ready to play, and I looked at him and said, "I need you to be honest with me." He looked at the phone, then at me, then at the table, played the voice note. When it ended, he said nothing for almost a full minute. Then he said his mother had asked him to stay out of it and let her handle things. He said she had told him I needed professional support and that getting involved would make things worse. I asked him directly, did he believe what his mother was saying about me? He said he didn't know what to believe. That sentence broke something in me quietly, the way a hairline crack spreads through a wall before anyone notices it. He had watched people treat me as a liability for weeks. He had watched his daughter's school stop calling me. He had said nothing, not because he was confused, but because he had made a choice. He chose his mother's version of events over 12 years of living with me. Picked up my cup of tea, finished it slowly. Then I went to our bedroom and locked the door. 2 weeks later I found the document. It was in Felix's email, which he had left open on the shared family laptop we used for Zara's school assignments. I wasn't looking for anything. I was downloading her reading homework. And there it was, an email chain between Felix and his mother, going back 5 months. I read the whole thing standing in the hallway. His mother, Mama No, had been speaking to a property lawyer. The house Felix and I lived in was purchased jointly, but the land it sat on was connected to a larger piece of property that had originally belonged to Felix's family. There was a question of inheritance. His older brother had recently gotten into debt. Mama No was restructuring how the family assets would be handled going forward. My name appeared in the email in a specific way. Mama No had written, "As long as she is seen as unstable and unreliable, any claim she makes to shared assets can be challenged. We need the narrative established before anything is filed." I read that sentence 4 times. The lies were not about me as a wife. They were not about me as a mother. They were about positioning me legally, so that if a dispute ever arose over property or finances, I would already be on record as someone whose word could not be trusted. It was not personal. It was strategic. And it had been running for months before that Sunday dinner. I started from the beginning. I went through every message I had ever received from Mama No. Pulled old emails. I found a birthday voice note she had sent me 2 Christmases ago where she called me the daughter I always wanted. I found text messages from Felix where he referenced conversations with his mother in ways that now read differently under the new light. I printed everything with dates. I contacted 2 family members who I knew had been told versions of the story, and I asked them, carefully and without accusation, to write down exactly what they remembered being told and when. My cousin Beezy agreed immediately. My Aunt Pauline surprisingly agreed too. I think the voice note incident had shaken her. I contacted the school. I got a written record confirming that my daughter's emergency contact had been changed without my knowledge or consent 3 months earlier. Felix had done it. His reason given to the school was that I was going through a difficult period. I pulled our April travel records, hotel receipts, photographs with geotags, the school absence letter, everything that made the invented incident impossible. I organized it all into a folder on my laptop with a password only I knew. Then I called a lawyer. Watching Mama No at the next family event was a different experience once I understood what I was looking at. She arrived in a pale pink lace blouse, smelling like baby powder and expensive perfume. She hugged everyone. She laughed loudly at her own jokes. She pulled small children onto her lap and called them by their nicknames. She asked after people's businesses, their husbands, their health. She remembered everyone's details and made each person feel seen. To me she was warmth itself. She held my face in her hands and said, "My daughter, you look tired. Are you eating well?" She said it loudly enough for people nearby to hear. The tone was concern. The subtext was diagnosis. When she turned away from me, I saw her whisper something to my Aunt Pauline. Pauline's eyes flickered toward me briefly before she looked away. That night, back at home, I went through the private messages she had sent Felix over the previous 2 months. The ones on the shared email chain I had already found. In those messages she described me as calculating, cold, and potentially dangerous to Zara's development. The woman who held my face and called me her daughter. 2 identities. 1 costume. 1 strategy. I saved screenshots of everything. My neighbor Funk changed everything. Funk had been married into Felix's extended family before her divorce 4 years earlier. We had always been friendly but never truly close. One evening she knocked on my gate with a container of beans and a look on her face that said she had been thinking about coming for a while. We sat in my garden while Zara played inside. Funk talked slowly at first. Then she told me that before me, there had been Felix's older brother's first wife, Adana. Adana had also been labeled unstable. Also been kept away from financial conversations. Also found herself on the outside of family decisions that directly affected her. Adana had eventually left the marriage with almost nothing, despite contributing money to a family business for 6 years. Her claims were dismissed in mediation because family witnesses described her as emotionally volatile and unreliable. Those witnesses had been briefed by Mama No. Funk pulled out her phone and showed me a message Adana had sent her 2 years ago, warning her that the family operated in a pattern. That the pattern always started with reputation. Always started with the word unstable. I was not the first. Adana was not the first either. Funk suspected there had been someone before Adana, a woman connected to Felix's uncle who had disappeared from family events, so gradually nobody had noticed. This was not improvised. This was a system. The money thread led me somewhere I hadn't expected. My name was on a joint savings account that Felix and I had opened 4 years ago. We contributed to it monthly for emergencies. I hadn't checked it in 8 months because Felix managed our accounts and I trusted him. The balance was almost empty. There had been 11 withdrawals over 14 months. Each one was below a threshold that would trigger a bank alert. The total amount removed was close to 3 million naira. The withdrawals had been made using Felix's access, but the account had a beneficiary listed that I didn't recognize. A business name I had never heard Felix mention. I went to the bank in person. I sat with an officer and asked for a full statement. I kept my voice steady and my face neutral while my hands gripped my bag under the counter. I took the printed statement home. Then I cross-referenced the withdrawal dates with the email chain I had found. 3 of the larger withdrawals happened within days of messages between Felix and Mama No discussing the property situation. The lies were not protecting a reputation. The lies were protecting a theft. My reputation had to be destroyed so that if I ever noticed the money was gone and tried to do something about it, no one would believe me. I went back to my lawyer the next morning. 3 weeks after my meeting with the lawyer, I was served papers. They came to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. A young man in a plain shirt handed them to me at the gate. I signed for them without showing any expression and went inside and sat at the kitchen table and read every page. Mama No had filed a formal complaint through a family legal mediator. The document described me as mentally and emotionally unstable, a risk to the welfare of the minor child Zara, and unfit to participate in any financial or property decisions connected to the family estate. There was a recommendation that I be assessed by a psychiatrist before being allowed to have unsupervised contact with Zara. Zara, who I had raised every single day. Zara, who I packed lunch for every morning. Zara, who fell asleep on my chest every night when she had bad dreams. They had taken the lies out of the dinner table and the church whispers and the family group chats, and they had put them on paper with a legal stamp. This was what the whole thing had been building toward. Every whisper, every coordinated phrase, every concerned conversation at family events, it was all preparation for this document. I held the papers for a long time. Then I added them to my folder. Now I had everything I needed. My lawyer's name was Chisholm. She was 41, quiet-spoken, and had handled 3 inheritance fraud cases in the past 5 years. She did not react dramatically when I showed her the folder. She turned each page carefully, made small marks with a pencil, and asked precise questions. When I finished laying everything out, she looked at me and said, "This is enough." She explained what we had. We had the fabricated incident that was disproved by travel records. We had the email chain showing coordinated intent to damage my reputation for financial purposes. We had the bank records showing systematic withdrawal. We had the school records showing unauthorized changes to my daughter's emergency contact. We had Beezy's and Aunt Pauline's written accounts of what they were told and when. We had Funk's testimony about the pattern and Adana's documented experience. We had the legal filing, which had now created a paper trail that could be directly contradicted by our evidence. Chisholm said we would not file anything immediately. She said the best move was to let them believe I was still unaware of the full picture. She wanted 2 more weeks to gather supporting documents and to contact Adana directly. I agreed. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger. Not sadness. Something closer to stillness. The kind that comes when you stop running and start walking very deliberately in one direction. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. Zara had a nightmare and came to my bed at 2 in the morning. She curled into me and I held her small warm body and listened to her breathing slow back to normal. After she fell asleep again, I lay there in the dark with my eyes open. And everything I had been holding together quietly for months sat on my chest at once. I thought about the Sunday dinner. About the way the room went quiet. About the faces turning toward me with that particular look that people wear when they've already decided. I thought about the teacher who asked me to wait outside. About the churchwoman who moved me to a less visible role. About Felix saying, "I don't know what to believe," while looking at the table. I thought about 3 million naira drained quietly from an account I trusted. I thought about Adana walking away with nothing. I thought about Mama No holding my face in her hands and saying, "My daughter, you look tired." Got out of bed. I went to the bathroom. I sat on the floor in the dark for a while. I let myself feel the full weight of it. I cried once, quietly, with my back against the cold wall. Then I washed my face. I went back to bed. I put my arm around Zara. In the morning I sent Chisholm a message. "I'm ready. Let's move." I stopped reacting and started choosing. Every move I made from that point had a purpose. I stopped avoiding family events. I showed up. I dressed well. I smiled easily. I asked after children and businesses and health the way Mama No did, because I had learned from watching her that the most powerful position in any room is the one that looks the least threatened. People who had been distant with me noticed I seemed lighter. Few reached back out. I welcomed them warmly, without making them feel guilty for pulling away. I started letting small truths out in casual conversation. Nothing dramatic, just corrections. If someone referenced something they had heard about me, I would say gently, "Oh, that's interesting because here's what actually happened," and share one clean, verifiable fact. Then I would change the subject. I was not defending myself. I was offering a counter-narrative and then stepping back to let people sit with the contradiction. I also made sure Felix saw me doing it. I wanted him to understand that I was no longer operating from confusion or pain. I wanted him to see that I was thinking clearly and moving with intention. Mama No sent me a message asking if I had received some documents and whether I had any questions. I replied, "Everything is being handled. Thank you for checking in." She did not reply for 4 days. I told Beezy first. I chose her because she was the one who had texted me first after that Sunday dinner. She had been manipulated, but she wasn't mean-spirited. She had simply been given information she trusted. I invited her for lunch on a Saturday. I brought one piece of evidence, the April travel records disproving the invented incident. Just that. I showed her the hotel receipt, the school absence letter, and 2 photographs with date stamps. I told her quietly what she had been told, and then I showed her why it was impossible. I did not tell her about the bank account. I did not tell her about the legal filing. I did not mention the emails. One fact. Clean. Verifiable. Beezy stared at the papers for a long time. Then she looked at me with the expression of someone recalculating an entire map. She asked me one question. "How long has this been going on?" I said, "Long enough that I needed to be sure before I said anything." She went home quiet. I didn't follow up. I didn't ask what she was going to do with the information. I had learned from months of watching that real information moves on its own once it finds the right person. 3 days later, Beezy called Aunt Pauline. Within 10 days, something shifted in the family. Beezy had apparently not kept the April documents to herself. She had shown them to Aunt Pauline. Aunt Pauline had shared them with her daughter Chidera, who was in the family group chat and who had a very direct communication style. Chidera had asked in the group chat whether anyone else had noticed inconsistencies in what they had been told. The chat went quiet for 2 hours. Then it erupted. My cousin Emeka, who lived abroad, said he had been told I had abandoned Zara at school one afternoon. He had always felt the story was strange but assumed there was something he was missing. He asked if anyone could verify it. Nobody could. My Aunt Pauline admitted she had repeated things she had not personally verified. Someone else admitted the same. Mama No posted in the chat twice, both times urging people to stop spreading confusion. Each post was met with more questions. Felix called me from another room in our own house. He said things were getting complicated. I said I knew. I said I hoped he was ready to be honest with people when they asked him directly. He hung up without responding. The fracture was no longer invisible. It was running through the middle of the family in real time. Chisholm and I chose a Sunday. Not a family gathering. Not a dramatic confrontation. A quiet, coordinated release of information through the right channels, timed so that the people who needed to see it saw it before Mama No had a chance to respond. Chisholm contacted the family mediator who had received Mama No's legal filing and submitted our counter-documentation. Every piece of evidence. The travel records. The bank statements. The emails. The school records. The accounts from Beezy and Aunt Pauline. A formal statement from Adana, who had agreed to provide one. The dates. The amounts. The contradictions. Simultaneously, I sent a private message to the 4 family elders who carried the most weight in decisions. Not an emotional message, not a plea. A clear, factual summary with attached documentation, written the way Chisholm had helped me structure it, calm and precise. I did not post in the group chat. I did not call anyone. I did not show up anywhere. I simply made the truth available to people who had the authority to do something with it. Then I closed my laptop and took Zara to the park. By the time we got back, my phone had 14 missed calls. The image cracked publicly within 48 hours. One of the family elders, my father's eldest uncle, called a family meeting. He did not invite me. He did not invite Mama No either, initially. He gathered the older relatives and went through the documents with them page by page. I heard about it from Aunt Pauline afterward. She said Uncle Chike had read the email out loud, the one where Mama No wrote about establishing a narrative so that any claim I made to shared assets could be challenged. She said the room went very quiet. The same quiet that had filled the Sunday dinner table when the lies were first told. Only this time the silence was directed somewhere else entirely. Mama No had spent months building a picture of herself as a worried, protective parent. That picture now had the emails behind it. And the bank withdrawals. And Adana's statement. And the fabricated April incident that a school letter, a hotel receipt, and 2 photographs made impossible. The mask did not fall slowly. Came off all at once. People who had been carefully managed by her for years suddenly had a framework for understanding interactions that had never quite made sense. Conversations they had been steered away from. Information they had been given at careful moments. The pattern was visible once someone named it. She was no longer the concerned mother. She was the architect. Felix called me into the living room on a Monday evening. He sat on the edge of the sofa with his hands between his knees. He looked like a man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just been told he could put it down, but wasn't sure his arms remembered how. He said he was sorry. He said he had told himself he was staying neutral, but he understood now that neutrality in that situation had been a choice that hurt me. He said his mother had made it seem simple, that I needed help, that involving himself would make things worse, that the best thing was to let her manage the situation. He said he hadn't let himself look too closely at what managing the situation actually meant. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, "The emergency contact at Zara's school. You changed it and told them I was going through a difficult period." He closed his eyes. I said, "That's the part that took the longest to forgive." He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He nodded slowly with his eyes still closed. I told him I wasn't ready to decide what our marriage looked like going forward. But I told him I needed him to understand that what had been done was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice he made every single day for months. He understood. The social consequences came without any help from me. Mama No had built her influence in the family the same way she had built the narrative. Gradually, consistently, through controlled access to information and carefully placed moments of warmth. People had trusted her not because they had verified her character, but because she had never given them a reason to question it. Now they had a reason. And once people started questioning, they couldn't stop. The family elder meetings she used to lead were rescheduled without her. The group chat went quiet when she posted. At a cousin's engagement introduction, family members greeted her briefly and moved on. Nobody was rude. Nobody confronted her loudly. They simply stopped treating her like the center. Aunt Pauline stopped forwarding her messages. Beezy stopped including her in side conversations. Emeka, calling from abroad, stopped asking for her opinion on family matters. The Women's Fellowship at church asked her to step back from her coordinating role while they reviewed some concerns. She had apparently run that role the same way she ran the family, controlling information and managing who had access to what. I did not participate in any of this. I did not encourage it. I did not celebrate it. I simply watched what happens when a structure built on a false foundation has the foundation quietly removed. The mediator ruled in my favor. The legal filing Mama No had submitted, the one labeling me unstable, recommending psychiatric assessment before unsupervised contact with my own daughter, was formally dismissed. Chisholm submitted our counter-evidence and the mediator, after reviewing everything, issued a written finding that the original filing lacked factual basis and showed evidence of coordinated misrepresentation. Those words, coordinated misrepresentation, were now on record. The joint savings account was frozen pending investigation. The business name the withdrawals had been directed to was traced to an account connected to Felix's brother's debt situation. Chisholm filed a formal complaint with the bank. The property matter that had started all of this was now under independent review by a different legal body, one that Mama No did not have existing relationships with. Uncle Chaik had requested the review himself after reading the emails. My name was formally cleared in the family legal record. I sat in Chisholm's office when she told me, and I felt something move through my chest that I didn't have a good word for. Not triumph. Something quieter. The feeling of a door that had been locked from the outside finally opening from the inside. Thanked her. I shook her hand. I drove home and made Zara's favorite pasta for dinner. Mama No tried one more time. She called a meeting with Uncle Chaik and 2 other elders. She brought a different version of events. In this version, she had been trying to protect the family from financial mismanagement. She said the emails had been taken out of context. She said she had genuinely been worried about me and that her concern had been misread as manipulation. She was composed. She was warm. She cried at the right moment. But the elders had already read the emails in full. They had already heard from Adana. They had already seen the bank records. They had already spoken to Chisholm. They already knew about the April fabrication and the school emergency contact. She was not speaking to people who were hearing the story for the first time. She was speaking to people who now had the full picture and were watching her try to repaint it. Uncle Chaik, who had known her for over 30 years, looked at her and said quietly, "We've seen the documents, no? All of them." She had no answer for that. The room waited. She picked up her bag. She straightened her blouse. She walked out. Nobody followed her. Life did not return to what it was before that Sunday dinner. I didn't want it to. What it was before was a life where I smiled through disrespect, trusted without verifying, and believed that love meant absorbing whatever someone gave me without asking questions. That version of my life had been comfortable in the way that sedation is comfortable. You don't feel the danger because you can't feel much at all. Zara started a new school year. Her emergency contact listed me first. Her teacher called me directly when she won a spelling competition in October. I cried in the car afterward and then laughed at myself for crying over a spelling competition. Felix and I are working through things slowly. He attends a counseling session every 2 weeks. I attend separately. We do not have answers yet about what comes next, but we are both showing up honestly, which is more than I can say for most of the previous year. The joint account was partially restored after the bank investigation concluded. Chisholm is still handling the property matter. It will take time. Mama No and I have not spoken since the mediator's ruling. I do not know if we will. I have not decided yet what, if anything, I want from that relationship going forward. What I know is this. I did not chase the lies. I did not fight them in real time, did not scream, did not post, did not beg anyone to believe me. I let them travel. I let them move through rooms and group chats and church corridors and family meetings. And they led everyone straight back to the truth. That was always where they were going. I just had to be patient enough to let them arrive.